Hello, I'm Pat Croce, and this is the American Cancer Society's HEAL Community Gathering. We meet here every Wednesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Time for a pep rally. That's right, on life. HEAL stands for Health and Energy Through Active Living Every Day. And it's our mission here at the gathering to inspire, encourage, inform, educate, and really just get involved with all of you to live a healthier life, a life of less suffering in the here and now, body, mind, and spirit, all in one, so that you feel much better about yourself and the world in general. And I'm not just talking about thinking about living life or living life. I'm talking about allowing life to be lived through you. You are the instrument which life thrives on. And I'd like to first start with an attitude of gratitude and thank our media sponsors, 6ABC, thank you, and all of our leadership partners who ponied up lots of money so that we could do the research that HEAL is doing down in ACS headquarters in Atlanta. It started with 85 people, and now it's up to 400 people in this second study. And Dr. Erica Rees-Punilla comes on every once in a while and gives us an update. She's great, an exercise scientist. And I want to thank all of you who've gone to acshealed.com and donated something, anything. And as a gift from us, we give you our bracelet, our HEAL bracelet with black lava beads and one green bead that signifies harmony and healing. And we're all in this together. We start our gathering with a moment of stillness. It's easy. All I ask you to do is rest your attention lovingly, gently on the sound of this bell. How beautiful is that? You don't realize it, but you were not expecting anything in the future. You were not comparing to how it was in the past. For all of you who've been touched by cancer or who have been touched by someone who's been touched by cancer, we are here for you. And I guarantee you will get a ping, as Oprah calls them, an aha moment today in the next 60 minutes. We've had all kinds of guests on, from medical to researchers to our warriors who have survived cancer, and they're just amazing. And today, when you think about the American Cancer Society, now, when you open up the org chart, at the very top, the El Jefe, the CEO, is Dr. Karen Knudsen. And we are privileged and honored and so psyched to have, she allows me to call her Karen on with us today. Come on, Karen.
Thank you so much for having me, Pat. Indeed, I am psyched, and I might have even already had my aha moment, which I think I need a bell.
They'll go good. It's just that what it does, Karen, for everyone, like even if your doorbell rings, you stop. Or it's just a stillness. It's a moment where the mind, it's a no mind moment where, and that's where all creativity arises. You as a research scientist know that thought doesn't produce newness. You have to go and be calm. You take the data, but then in that moment of stillness is when the universal intelligence, when God whispers with little grace, how about this? And you go, oh. And then you formulate it based on your dharma, based on your skill set into some new strategy. And I would love, I didn't say anything about all the educational institutions you went to because I'd like you to do it. And I want to do it with a question.
Okay.
What did you want to be when you grew up, when you first went to GWU?
So when I entered into GW, my eye was really geared towards science, but I wasn't yet set on what I wanted to do with it, whether that was a career in medicine or was a career at the scientific bench. And I think this probably the surprise to me in my life is the ability to marry really those two.
And so then you went and at GW, is that when you realized that research was your calling?
So it was. So I had like many people who go into science, you're really changed by mentors that probably don't fully appreciate the impact that they had on your life. So I had a professor at GW. I think he's still there if he hasn't retired. His name was David Morris. And he was really interested in how it is that you could use lower organisms like bacteria to convert them into making alternative fuel sources, more kind of green fuel sources. So this is in the 80s. So this was really net new thinking. And it was before the molecular biology kind of revolution when you could alter organisms in a way that they could even help them, create something like an alternative fuel source. So I was working for him and I started to learn the discipline of science, and he taught me quite a lot about creative thinking and the ability to.
Stop. Just give us, oh, no, this is too good. Someone as creative as you, I want to know, what did you learn about creative thinking that you applied in your studies?
Yeah. So I think what he taught me is to challenge the paradigm, to ask not, why can't we do something, but, how can we? If what we want to achieve is this really lofty goal, which is using lower organisms like bacteria to create something that's a green fuel source, how can that happen? What would have to be true in order to make it work? And I think I still use that today in my life as a mom, as a researcher, as a healthcare executive. It was always, how can we help cancer patients? Not what are all the reasons why we can't. And so I think that it was that, I think, freedom of thought to dream the impossible that was really attractive to me. And especially at that time of your life, right? When you're in my case, late teens, early 20s. I was 20 when I graduated from college. So, I was pretty young then. And I think that you can do anything if you set your mind to it and you have the right mentor blowing wind at your back. And I think I learned that from him.
Oh, I love that. I love that sacred shift from why to how. Why things don't work, but how can it? That's beautiful. So now you took this how, the how is in the now becomes this wow, and you go to the University of California in San Diego. Why there?
Yeah. So when I was at GW, one of the nice things about GW is how close it is to the NIH and to the National Cancer Institute. So Dr. Morris had said to me, you should think about working in the summer at the National Cancer Institute. So I did that. And this is at the time when there was quite a lot of interest in understanding retroviruses because of the HIV epidemic. And people didn't understand even just the fundamentals of how it is that retrovirus replicated. So I worked in a lab, interestingly, at the National Cancer Institute in Frederick, but that was interested in studying something called retrotransposons, which are little pieces of DNA that jump actually from chromosome to chromosome. And in the way that they do it, it's kind of like a retrovirus. So the thought was, okay, if you can study this chromosome, this little piece of DNA jumping, then you can understand retrovirus. So I thought, okay, this is really interesting. So I worked in this lab and it taught me the discipline of genetics. And so I loved that. And when I went to graduate school, I wanted to stay with that discipline of genetics. And I went to University of California, San Diego, because they were so good at it. And it was there that I was so much of, I think, for me, just like everyone, being in the right place at the right time without having any forethought and knowledge about that has just shaped your life. So I was in the right place at the right time. I wanted to study genetics. I happened to be in San Diego because they're really good. And it's the case that this was the time when now gene cloning, the sequencing of genes, which it used to take you 5 years, was your whole graduate career just to sequence one gene. Now we can do it in a couple of hours, right? This is before internet, before email. So it was really laborious. And so people were starting to clone genes. And I cloned a gene called RAD1, which is important in your cell's ability to sense DNA damage and say, whoa, gotta stop. I should not replicate. I should not make more of myself when I have this DNA damage problem. And so I cloned a gene that's critical for that. That's true in yeast, where I found it.
Wait.
Yeah.
When you said I cloned it, does that mean it was never cloned before?
Yeah, that's right. And it was in this heyday of like, we hadn't been sequenced before. And so what I had was a model organism, in this case yeast, that was defective in that process. You could insult it with DNA damage through radiation, like you do with a cancer patient, and it would just blow through it. It would keep going and then ultimately die because it couldn't say to itself, I got to stop. So the way that you cloned genes at that time was to put back in every gene sequentially that occurred in yeast and figure out which one, what we call complemented, which one fixed the problem. So then once you knew that, then you sequenced it. Now that sounds simple, but it took 5 years. So, but it happens that that gene is really important in the context of cancer. It is the case that we know cancer is a disease of accumulating DNA damage mutation, and that helps cancer cells acquire these pro-growth, uncontrolled growth characteristics. So I didn't know it, but I started working on cancer at that moment.
Wow.
Because just fortuitously, this gene that I cloned had tell cells, you've got damage, you need to stop, don't do anything, either fix it or kill yourself at a cell level. And so that's still true. That's also true in humans. The genes has the same function in humans. So I started working on this and thought, okay, this is really cool. I can apply genetics to a problem that has something to do with people. So then for my next gig, I want to get closer to people. I want to start to apply the things I know how to do to a more direct line of sight to help someone. And so that's why I chose my next step, which was still in San Diego, but at Ludwig Institute for Cancer Research under an incredible mentor, totally shaped my life. And when I walked into his office to work, his lab worked on retinoblastoma, which is a really aggressive eye cancer in children, rare, but really a terrible disease. And he also had an incredible brain tumor group, and he was thought to be just this thought leader in both of them. And I walked into my fellowship, now post PhD, you do this fellowship period, which is where you're intended to gain. What are you going to work on that's going to really move the field forward, that you're going to take with you when you start your own faculty position? So I thought I would work in his retinoblastoma group, and he said, Karen, I want to work on prostate cancer. I said,
Oh,
okay, interesting. Tell me more. Like, why? And he said, well, let's look at clinical need. We have not made any fundamental advances in prostate cancer in decades, which was true at the time. We don't really understand it as a disease. We don't understand what causes it. We don't understand how to treat it. And it's the second leading cause of cancer death. So we've got to start to turn our attention to do something about that. And I thought, okay, I get that. And so, so I basically started my research program from a clinical need. And I think that's given the theme for my entire career, which is to where is the clinical need for a cancer patient for either, and that can include prevention. I'm going to say all the way prevention to survivorship. Where's the urgent need? And then how do you take that back into the laboratory and model it so that what you're doing either has a short-term horizon to a patient gain, or at the very least a long-term horizon to a patient gain. And that's how we prioritize. And that's how, up until the day that I went to ACS, which is, by the way, exactly 6 months ago today, I realized today's an AHA anniversary. I had my laboratory at still working in advanced prostate cancer. And we had the good fortune to have discoveries that actually went to the clinic and made a difference for life-extending therapy. So I'm pretty enthusiastic about that strategy of saying, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And back to how we started, how can we get there? What has to be true in order for us to move the dial in this thing that we care about, which in my case was advanced prostate cancer? And then let's put all our effort toward what it is that we can do better than anyone else, faster than anyone else, that we're uniquely positioned to do. And let's move forward. And so, that was my career as a researcher. And I think that same, let's look at the clinic, see what's needed, figure out how science fits into that and make it work, was what interested me in leading a cancer center and also a cancer care program, because it all really flows together.
And when did you go to the Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Jefferson Health? When was that?
Yeah, so I left my fellowship in 2000 and went to my first faculty appointment, which was in Ohio at the School of Medicine in Cincinnati, and was there for quite some time. And then Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center in 2007 was really keen to take all of the components that were their prostate cancer program, little pockets of excellence everywhere, and tie it together. So they really wanted me to come and tie together all things prostate, clinical and research. And I couldn't say no to that because they're so good. And the need to solve issues of prostate cancer, which is disproportionately high in Philly, both from an incidence and a mortality perspective.
Why is that?
Yeah, great question that we actually still don't know, but it is really high when you compare just the 7 counties surrounding Philadelphia, including Philadelphia County. If you compare that to the rest, the rates, so it has nothing to do with the density of the area. The actual rate of incidence is high. Now that can be a good thing because it can mean that you're screening more, right? Because if you're not screening, you're not finding it. Okay, so screening rates alone or diagnosis rates alone they're important, but they don't tell the whole story. When it's accompanied by a much higher mortality rate than the rest of the state or the state of New Jersey or the rest of the country, now you know you got a problem. And so we don't completely understand it. Some of it has to do with the diversity within Philadelphia, which I personally love. It's one of the things I love about this city. But we know that Black men have a much higher rate of prostate cancer mortality and aggressive disease. We don't know enough about the genetics of cancer across diverse populations. So we know that there's a genetic risk of cancer in a subset of prostate cancers that gives them very aggressive cancer. And those are some of the same genes associated with breast and ovarian cancer in women. We just kind of missed the men when we started looking at BRCA genes. So, for example, a BRCA family member who has inherited a BRCA alteration, that's a man, has a higher risk of aggressive prostate cancer. We know that now.
How come we don't know that?
Well, I've tried to shout about it as much as I possibly can. And that is one of the things ACS will be doing in 2022 is being much more eloquent about, as saying what are the things that we really need to look out for prostate cancer. But those things that we know we've only hit the tip of the iceberg, actually, understanding genetic risk of prostate cancer. It's the case that what we do know, we feel confident about, but it's all based on looking at the genetic history of whites from European descent. We don't know about other populations. And so actually I'm so proud of this, actually. If I had to go back and look at my career, one of the things that I'm the most proud of is that the Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center set up the first men's genetic risk clinic for prostate cancer in the country. And there are still only 2. So, so we're uniquely poised to try to do something about it. But that's one of the things that drove me to Philly is the incredible clinical expertise, the incredible science that was there that just needed to be put together in a way that found synergy, but also just the need of the patients around us. And so, my life in Philly started with addressing the needs of prostate cancer, but then ultimately leading the entirety of the cancer program and including the clinical arm as we expanded from 3 hospitals to what's now 16. So, I'm really proud of what we were able to do of not just providing really excellent cancer care across a much bigger geography, but providing access to the most advanced care through, putting clinical trials out into the community and tying it to the science. That's the way things should work. And that's what I love about ACS. We hold the same values, which is to do everything we possibly can to improve the lives of cancer patients and their families. Like what you said, less suffering. Same thing. ACS is, I think, very unique in the ability to use multiple strategies to improve lives.
Okay, so I see that you are always open, available, and aware that opportunities present themselves, and you never resist what is. You look at it, unfold it, and check it out as the researcher you are. And so you come to Philadelphia and you mix clinical with research, and then the me becomes a we. And now you have to run 16 oncology centers. And then you go on and get an MBA, you just like, I'm scared to even talk to you, like, holy mackerel. But nevertheless, then fast forward, give me the moment when someone considered you a candidate to head up ACS. Somewhere, these 3 initials were something that you were doing decades earlier, and all of a sudden you could be the El Jefe, the big chief. What was that moment?
Yeah, it was an interesting one, actually. I won't forget it anytime soon. So it's the case that I loved what I did, as
Obviously.
in healthcare and in research, and I loved it. And I had such, and the reason I loved it is one, the impact of what we did was just measurable, and the ability to grow impact under my CEO, who I thought was a real visionary, was really high. So I was incredibly satisfied in my job, which is probably the best time to, unfortunately, that's also the time sometimes when you're the most open to thinking about something different, because you have no reason to look anywhere. So there's a lot of turning down things that people put in front of you. Um, and I really thought I would do that job forever. I also loved my team, and I had worked so hard to build this team, and I thought they were just exceptional. I couldn't imagine walking away from these guys ever. They're my family. They're my work family. So then I got this call, and that's not unusual, but I got a call about ACS, and what they said to me really resonated, which was, we're this old, incredibly impactful organization that is in this new phase of life where it had really been kind of 12 different organizations, and it's coming together under one. And we want someone who's going to just take it to the next level and seamlessly weave together the things that we do well: research, advocacy. And because at the end of the day, that's what's going to cure cancer, right? Research is going to tell you the answers. Advocacy is what it's going to take to make sure everyone has access to those new strategies for prevention, detection, and cure. But then until that happens, we're in the moment, helping patients through direct patient support, whether that's a ride, whether that's giving them lodging, whether it's educational materials that we give to literally every cancer center across the US. And I knew this about ACS. But they said, we want to take that, we want to thread those three things: research, advocacy, patient support, better together, and we want to grow. And I thought, I listened, had this kind of long call, and I remember hanging up the phone and then saying to my husband, I can do this job. And I think I'd be really excited about it. And I can't believe that I'm saying that, but I think I could be really excited about this. And so then I sat down and I thought, okay, well, I recognized what ACS did because they were my partner. When I needed research dollars, they were there. When I needed to go to the Pennsylvania State Capitol or to the US and push for something like reimbursement for something really important for cancer patients, ACS was there. And without question, especially given the patient population I served in downtown Philadelphia, I can't imagine delivering cancer care without ACS helping us to get patients to therapy when they had no other way. And so I loved what they did. And I thought, okay, if we can take that and we can grow it and make it even more impactful across the country and make it work all across the country like it works in Philly, then we can really make a difference. And so then I met, then I slowly but surely got to meet with the board and meet with the current members of the executive team. And I also recognized just how amazing they were and really ready to go into this next phase of ACS to further increase our impact. So yeah, I surprised myself, Pat. It's my long way of saying, just that moment when I hung up the phone and went to my husband, and he looked at me and he said, "What's going on?" And I explained, I said, I actually think I might want to do this. And he was shocked.
That's so good.
So
give me the next moment when you get the call that you're in.
Yeah, so that was actually a late at night phone call because the board needed to meet and vote, and they're all in different time zones, and so I got a call at about like 9 o'clock at night saying that the board wants to talk to you in 15 minutes, and I said, okay, sure, happy to do. And I was stunned. I was just stunned. I was so delighted and, and really thrilled. Again, I walked out of my office and I said, Brian, my husband, Brian, we're going to do this. And he was so excited because he, like me, my husband's not at all in academic medicine or research. He's in marketing and not for anything.
So are you.
academic medicine. But we do things like a team. If I'm going to take this on, he's got to be 100% behind me, and the children, even though they're adults now. But it's the case that, yeah, he was pumping the ceiling too. It was good. And it's just been an amazing 6 months. We've done so much. And I just.
Okay, stop there. So you even said it's 6 months to the day when you were named CEO of the American Cancer Society. That is way cool. Now, when you went in and did your inquiry, your exploration, your investigation, what did you find?
Yeah. So I had, and this is not uncommon in academic medicine, I needed 2 months between the time that I told Jefferson that I was leaving until I came to ACS to stay on the job. It's not easy to hand off a massive cancer center. In fact, they're still looking for my replacement, but I had to put in a couple of interims and shore up some things. They're doing really well. I think they're getting close to finding the next me. But in that 2 months, it was really like having 2 jobs, right? So, doing just massive amounts of work at Jefferson, and then at the same time learning and nights and weekends about ACS. And as much as I am a scientist and a healthcare executive, I'm a business person too. There's a science to the discipline of business, which I really love. Actually, that's why.
Well, we should tell everyone. I have to interrupt because you didn't mention you got your MBA at Temple University Fox School of Business as well.
I sure did. And I loved that. And I guess I should explain a little bit why I was doing it, because I was already running in business. I was running healthcare, all of cancer for Jefferson Health when I went to go do that. And it was because of all the growth. We had gone from 3 hospitals to 5 to 8 to 10. And with each merger and acquisition, it's a culture change, of different groups that had come in, and that I needed to assemble into thinking about how to function as one team, one strategy, one vision, not everything top down. How are we going to work together so that everyone has a voice and a shared governance model that we move forward? And I thought, healthcare does it like this way. And we've been doing it this way a long time. And kind of back to the beginning of how we started, like, how can we do it better? And so I thought, I'm going to spend a little time over at Temple, and I'm going to meet with people and work with people who have expertise in finance and banking and marketing and real estate. And I'm going to learn new ways to basically run a large business unit, especially that's got multi-site. And I loved it. It was I really loved it. And everything that I learned, I felt I could implement. And I think I really thought going through the process that as a scientist, you had a huge advantage because you knew how already to assess data. You knew how to develop and test a hypothesis. And these are in some ways, business is a little like that. So coming into ACS, that also became very helpful for me because I felt that I could see areas that were opportunities for us where we could make a major difference pretty quickly.
Such as?
Such as patient support. Let's talk about that. So I talked about these 3 things we do really well: research, advocacy, patient support. So patient support is so tangible. It's so important. And we do it in 5,000 communities across the US. So there are things that we do and we set nationally as a goal, like prevention strategies, screening strategies, advocacy for healthy living strategies that we do across the nation. And then there's the unit that looked at transportation. How do we get patients to therapy? How do we identify where the biggest need is? And how are we going to coordinate that? And then there's the lodging group. Then there's the group who looked at patient navigation, where we actually fund navigators in really, important areas of the country, and they help in every way. Patient navigators are very tightly tied to better outcome, and it's something that can dramatically reduce cancer disparities in areas where they exist. So we fund these navigators. So all these wonderful things that directly touch patients and families were happening, but they were parked all over the American Cancer Society, being governed not with one single vision of, okay, it's 2021. What is the most important challenge facing a cancer patient right now? And what is being addressed by others in the world, like the health systems? And where are the gaps? What do we need to do? So who is that what is the single strategic vision So I took all of these things, even before I started, that I called patient support, and said, we're going to create a pillar called patient support. I don't care where you report, in your org chart, like we'll worry about that later. But functionally, what do we do? What is our impact right now? How do we measure it? Which is, we measure it in lives touched, and it's millions of lives touched every year.
Wow.
It's when we sat down and we started to put together the data, Pat, it was seriously a teary moment of, oh my God, and even those that were doing it didn't realize nationally how many patients we support every year. And it was such good foundational work for us. And I said, okay, let's grow it. Which parts are the most important for us to grow? What are the resources we would need? So I got them kind of strategically thinking about not just navigation and not just lodging, but in totality, where are the areas that we need to go in? And so that patient support pillar needs a leader. And so that leader will be our first chief patient officer.
Wow.
And so in the absence of ACS having its very first chief patient officer, you're looking at her. So I leaned in, and so I was serving as the chief patient officer as well as the CEO, along with some amazing, amazing people, these people who headed the screening effort and who headed the navigation effort. They all came together to work with me in a committee, and they're awesome. So the team's built. And although I can't reveal his name yet because we've got to agree on all the press release things, I was delighted when at 10 o'clock last night, I signed our first chief patient officer.
Yeah.
Awesome. He's so good. He's so good, Pat. You're going to want to have him on your show and at Healed. And we're going to want to make him a big part of this because his expertise, he's a medical oncologist, and his expertise is in palliative care and survivorship. So he's really, really attendant to those things that, that we collectively all hold so important, which is that importance of healthy living, not just as prevention and not as you can during active
and not just surviving. No, thriving and
living. And the data are unimpeachable, right? The data to say that having an active lifestyle as a cancer survivor is linked to reduced recurrence is high. And so he is really, I think, going to be a game changer for us as an organization, who will be that person who's, I hate this analogy, I need to think of a better one, but who's always thinking about skating to where the puck is going to be.
Oh, that's Wayne Gretzky.
I know, but it's so overused, but it's so accurate on this one. So, so he's going to be a great addition for us as we're just constantly thinking about what's next, what's changing in this cancer landscape. And from myself, from our chief patient officer and our chief medical and scientific officer, all still being still tightly connected to oncology, we can stay abreast of what are the real challenges right now.
Wow, you are beautiful. And 2024, if you're going to leave ACS, President of the United States, I will help in any way possible.
I don't know if my husband would sign on to let me go for that one.
Well, you never know. You never know. He might say, how do we do it? But so, Dr. Karen Knudsen, CEO of The World, I'm going to have you sit on the bench for a little while and bring on our warrior segment, and you're going to love Brandy. She's just fabulous. And then I'm going to bring you back.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all that. And I love your passion. If I 3-word mantras, follow your enthusiasm, your pictures in the book. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I totally agree. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. Okay, our next guest, and we always have a survivor, a thriver, let's put it that way, as part of our ACS Healed community gathering. And today we're bringing back Brandy Plotnick. Brandy will demonstrate her courage and vulnerability and her self-advocacy that are just items that we should all put in our own journal. Brandy, are you there?
I am. Hello, Pat. So good to be here again.
It's great to have you. And what a 1-2 punch we have with Dr. Knudsen and you, Brandy. You see everything she's doing.
Yes, and I'm with you. I would absolutely canvass a neighborhood and knock on doors for her in 2024. Absolutely.
So please share with our gathering your cancer journey, because many who are attending right now are in the midst of either diagnosis, their treatment plan, or their survivorship on how they should do or what can they do to live life to the fullest. And you are an example, a role model.
Oh, thank you for that. So for me personally, I have been hyper aware of breast cancer almost my whole adult life. I did have a family history of it, although not a terribly strong one. My maternal grandmother was diagnosed very early in her 30s. And by the time that they caught it, it was quite advanced. But she was a strong German lady and she survived it. She thrived afterwards until her late 50s when she did have another cancer that eventually took her life. And my mother was an only child. I'm an only child. And we were kind of, we were scared of breast cancer. And, you know, I don't like to be fearful of things in life, but that's one thing I've always been fearful of. And my mother was too. So all throughout my 30s and 40s, I was kind of the squeaky wheel with my healthcare team. I made sure that I started getting those mammogram screenings as soon as I could. I made sure that whatever latest advances were out there, I was asking all the questions to learn more about them and find out if they were for me. I did have genetic testing several years ago, and all of that stuff came back negative for those mutations that almost guarantee you're going to get breast cancer. I didn't have any of that, thankfully. But even with all of this awareness, and I think we use awareness a lot when we talk about breast cancer, even with all this awareness, and healthy living. You know, I've always been a proponent of a healthy diet and exercise, and all of that is a little bit more of a recent addition to my life within the past several years. Last November in 2020, I had my mammogram, which was a little bit delayed because of COVID, right? Everybody was putting off those important screenings. And I did the same, but I got my screening in November. It was about 6 months delayed, and it came back clean, which was wonderful. And I should also back up and say that, you know, earlier, like several years ago, I had asked my doctors at Penn if I could be considered for these fast MRI screenings. This is an additional screening protocol that's used in between mammography, particularly for women that have dense breast tissue, which I did. I've always been told I had these fibrocystic, this dense breast tissue, which almost makes it like, I don't know, you're looking for a cancerous lump in a sea of other lumps. They're just so dense and so hard to feel something when you're doing your self breast exams, and hard for even the best mammography to detect. So I wanted to be considered for these MRI screenings, and my gynecologist at the time agreed, and we started doing those. So every 6 months I was getting either a mammogram or an MRI. So
And how long ago was this?
I started that about 3 years ago. And it's stressful when you're fearful of something and you're getting screened for it every 6 months. And then afterwards you get a phone call that more follow-up testing is needed on something they found. It's almost like a reinforcement of that fear every 6 months. And I think about you often now that we've met, because trying to live in the moment is difficult when you're constantly living that way and in fear of what someone's going to tell you about a future screening.
But stay there, Brandy, just for 1 minute, that it is difficult to be in the present moment when your mind is conditioned to be fear-based, to be projecting to the future, and you're not living now. It's fear, F-E-A-R, false expectations appearing real. But just know that you aware that you're fearful and you aware that you're working to be in the present moment is beautiful. That into itself is a treatment plan. That's part of your fitness plan. Just continually shifting from that fearful thought to bringing it into the now, where you cannot have a fearful thought. It's impossible.
That's correct. And I will say, as a side note, having a cancer diagnosis made me a better liver in the present moment.
Oh, good.
It changed my entire life in a way that is for the better. And
can you share with us how that happened?
Yes. So in May, when actually that MRI detected my very small cancer that the mammogram in November had missed, I felt like my body had betrayed me. I had been doing all of the right things. I had been eating a healthy diet and exercising and trying to live healthy, and my body betrayed me. I was extremely fearful, not of dying. I knew that the type of cancer that I had, which was a stage 0 cancer, actually, it was that early, wasn't going to kill me. I was not afraid of dying. I was afraid of not thriving anymore. So I was terrified of all of the associated treatments and all of the things I had heard about the drugs associated with treating my kind of cancer.
And what kind of cancer? What was your diagnosis? Please share.
So my cancer is called ductal carcinoma in situ, or DCIS. And what it means is that there is a cancer tumor that is confined to the milk ducts in the breast. It's considered non-invasive, which is wonderful. And sometimes it doesn't even spread outside the milk ducts. It can just stay there. But the problem is, for some people, it does become invasive. And it also increases your chance of getting more and different types of cancers in either breast. So that's what I had. I am among the luckiest of the unlucky people who are diagnosed with cancer. So that was my diagnosis. And I had to learn to think about, okay, so this is going to change my life, but what things about my life do I love that cancer is not going to change? And that's how I started living in the moment. Okay, so,
You just said what Dr. Knudsen said. How? How can I live with this? How much better can I live with this? That's beautiful.
Yes, I thought, I don't know how this is going to affect me. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do all of the things that I love, but I know that there are many things that I love doing, many things that I love about myself and respect about myself that are not going to change. It's not going to affect my sense of adventure. It's not going to affect my intelligence. It's not going to affect the love I have for the work that I do every day. It's not going to affect my love for my family and my dogs and my garden and all of those things around me that give me joy. Cancer can't take that from me. So I had to start thinking about those things right now. And, I had been doing a lot of work on myself in that area, but I think, unfortunately, it took something like cancer to kind of help me get over that hump and do it better.
It's amazing how the universe shakes us awake, isn't it? It gives us all kinds of wake up and we don't listen. And then all of a sudden, okay, I hear you, enough.
Yes.
So what was your treatment plan?
So I was presented initially with the default treatment plan for DCIS, which was a lumpectomy. They just cut the cancer out, basically, get good margins and throw it in the garbage, followed by a protocol of radiation therapy that is targeted towards killing any cancer cells that may be lurking around in the tissue that they don't know about. And then followed by 5 years of a drug called tamoxifen, which works to decrease the estrogen in your body that in my case was feeding my cancer cells. So that was the standard protocol. And if you remember, I said I'm the squeaky wheel. So I had already done all sorts of research. I knew that was the standard protocol. I also knew that there was another option, and that option was a double mastectomy. So when my surgeon went over the standard protocol, I said, can we back up? I said, what about this other option where I can just have a double mastectomy and have both breasts removed, the tumor along with most of the tissue that is capable of growing more breast cancer. And then that actually would give me the opportunity to bypass radiation and tamoxifen if the pathology came back consistent with their initial findings, which in my case, it did. So my plan worked beautifully. So that's what I ended up doing, is a double mastectomy. And even then, I had to think a little bit like a scientist, because I had to examine all of the options out there for me. For women who are having a double mastectomy, it's almost assumed that you're going to go immediately to a breast reconstruction of some sort, whether they take tissue from your abdomen to rebuild that or they use implants of some sort. And for me, I kept doing lots of research. I kept asking people, change my mind about this option. I have preconceived notions about things. And I talked to people and said, change my mind about it. And in some cases they did. And what I discovered is that if you don't like something or you don't feel comfortable with something, there's almost always another way. And I didn't feel comfortable with breast reconstruction for so many reasons. And I thought, I'm going to make a decision now to seek out a community of other women who have decided to live flat and not have reconstruction. And there's no hiding it. There's no shame involved in it. And I thought, these are my people. And so that's the option that I chose based on my health. And so I couldn't be happier with it. I feel great. I feel like there's always going to be that lurking worry about cancer returning to my life.
So stay there, Brandy, stay there, because my question was going to be, where now is the element of fear? Where it was before at 10 and you lived with this sort of Damocles hanging over your head throughout your life, where is it now?
So it's still there, but I would say it's different. Not necessarily better or worse, it's different because I feel like now, if cancer returns to my body or if it's already there and I don't know about it, I've survived it once and I can do it again. And I know that. And so I also feel like every single day is such a gift. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with my body. I feel healthy until somebody tells me otherwise. And so that's the path that I've chosen to take. And it's very liberating for me.
So this path, and this is HEALed, Health and Energy Through Active Living Every Day. Share with us how HEALed is part of your path.
So for me, I think the biggest part of it is getting away from that thought that your body betrayed you. And I had to get past that. My body did not betray me. In fact, all the healthy choices that I had made leading up to my diagnosis, never thinking I was going to get cancer, the healthy eating, I eat exclusively plants. So I'm a plant-based eater. I exercise vigorously. I work up a sweat at least 5 times a week through CrossFit at my wonderful gym, Kana Fitness in Ambler. And this place has made me feel like an athlete. It's given me a perception of myself that I never had before. It's increased my confidence. It's increased my endorphins. And I think all of those things together prepare your body for things that are going to happen. When I got cancer, I wonder how much worse could it have been if I hadn't been so healthy. And I wonder how long would it have taken me to recover from my double mastectomy, which is no small deal. It's a major.
How long did it take?
It took me about 6 weeks to get all of my range of motion back. Wow. Now, for some women, it takes months. For some, it takes a few weeks. And the common thread for women who recover quickly is a healthy body going into it. So if you're healthy going into it, you're going to recover much better, much more completely, and much more quickly. And so that's how HEALed kind of fits into my life. Even though I didn't know it at the time, I had been training for this moment for years. And it served me very well. So my body absolutely didn't let me down. What my body did was help my soul and my will get through what I wanted to get through.
So before I bring Dr. Knudsen back on, Brandy, share with us this passion for living. Part of it is fitness and the HEALed movement. What else makes your heart sing?
I think I have an increased appreciation for little things. I wake up and I see the way the sun is coming up and it's beautiful, and I can marvel at that moment and think how awesome it is to be living right now. I love animals. I'm a huge animal advocate, and that gives me great joy. I love to visit animal sanctuaries. I love to hug cows. I love to hug pigs. They're individuals to me and they give me great joy. I also love the outdoors and nature. I'm a gardener, I'm a plant nerd, and I will never get tired of knowing that something that I can eat and gives me pleasure came from a seed. Like, that is just endlessly fascinating for me. I love the way that you can attract different types of nature and wildlife to your yard just by selecting the right plants. All of those things are things that drive me, gives me a lot of joy, and makes me feel like I'm making a small contribution to the world and making it better. And now, after cancer, one thing that gives me great joy is doing things like this, because I have never been shy about my cancer diagnosis. I don't keep it secret. All of my wonderful colleagues, my work family, knew about my cancer diagnosis soon. The more people I opened up to, the more love and support I got back, which was a huge part of my healing. I had people from my gym family coming and bringing me homemade food after my surgery, checking in and sending flowers and all of those things. And it was because I was open. And so that fills my life with a lot of passion now, is sharing my story, because I know that personally, there have been several friends of mine who've said, I'm taking this more seriously now because of what happened to you. And I love that.
Oh, that's beautiful. I said in the opening of this gathering that you were a role model, and not just to think about living life, not even to live life, but to allow life to be lived through you. And that's exactly what you're doing. Regardless of what life brings you, you're taking it on with a passion, you're embracing it, not resisting it, but you're in alignment with it and sharing your passion with whatever you're doing. And therefore, that high vibrational frequency pervades everyone around you, and they have that same beautiful smile you do. So Brandy, I'm going to bring on our other smiling guest. So you stay right there. We're going to bring Dr. Karen Knudsen, the CEO of ACS, back. There she is.
Yeah.
So Karen, how about Brandy?
Incredible. Yeah. And I can't thank you enough, Brandy, because sharing those stories is actually meaningful. There'll be somebody who heard this today who will go get screened because it had not, or who is facing a diagnosis and really upset with themselves and their body, who got a little bit of hope about how to think differently. So I really appreciate you saying that. Just coming in and sharing your story, I know is not simple, but it makes such a difference.
So Brandy, you have the VIP CEO of the American Cancer Society. You were diagnosed with cancer. Your body was, not you, but your body. Now, do you have any questions for someone who's at the top of the org chart for the society that is overlooking the clinical trials, the implementation, the advocacy of what we're stand for in healed, in moving forward and thriving through life?
Oh, I so do. So Dr. Knudsen, it's fabulous to meet you. I'm so honored to be on with you. And also congratulations, 6 months, and it's a new thing, and I'm sure it's a big job. So I'm honored, but I have so many questions for you. I'm going to try to limit this, but I am really interested from your perspective and with your background in the research type that you have done, to know a little bit more about how you feel about alternative therapies and things like that. So I'll tell you, this is timely for me because I just read a book that was given to me by a new friend. Cancer has also given me a lot of new friends. And one of my new friends gave me a book called Radical Remission by Dr. Kelly Turner. And I just finished it, and it's all about these stories of people who have experienced radical remission. They have taken an approach of, you know what, I'm going to implement some sort of alternative therapy, whether that means completely changing my diet or doing some sort of spiritual healing or implementing meditation or other mindfulness into their lives. And what I liked about the book is that I'm a scientific thinker. I too have a scientific background. The book was not advocating for shunning conventional medicine or shunning Western medicine. It was for kind of looking at ways that these alternative things helped people either get through their cancer in conjunction with these therapies or sometimes on their own. And a lot of these stories were like people who were told that even with the best and most aggressive conventional therapy, their prognosis was very poor. And it was going to really decrease the 6 months of life that were going to be left for them. So they just said, forget it, I'm going to do something radically different. And they did. And miraculously, 10 years later, they're still around talking about it. So I'm very curious about your opinion of that kind of thing and where you think those things fit in, particularly with the American Cancer Society's mission.
Yeah, I think these are great questions because certainly, there's a desire on everyone's part to be their own best advocate for their health. And if it's something that a patient themselves can change or modify and they think it can help, they want to be able to try it. So I try to be very data driven in my assessments. I'm very open to thinking about alternative strategies that can complement cancer therapy and deliver a better outcome. And so what I always advocate in these situations is just having that discussion with your oncologist. They'll probably be more, especially for someone who's under active treatment, they'll probably be much more understanding than you would expect. The data tell us that things like Reiki and and meditation, or even music and art therapy, can be associated with a better outcome. Those data are there. That's real. Even reducing social isolation for breast cancer is known to be associated with a better outcome. We can't always say the why that happens, but there are data out there. Where things start to sometimes become a little bit problematic is sometimes in the nutraceuticals arena, where people can actually get on to taking something that actually counteracts their chemotherapy and they just don't know it. And so that's just where the full disclosure comes in as being really important for someone who's under active therapy. But I think all of us are open to the concept that what's an alternative therapy now may be an approved therapy later. I'll just remind that one of the major chemotherapies that gets used in cancer setting across many tumor types, or a class of compounds called taxanes. They came from a yew tree. I mean, they came from natural products of things that our predecessors knew had helpful properties. So I think that there is, significant open thinking about this, but from my perspective and that from ACS, we do just try to be very data driven about ensuring that if we're going to make a recommendation for something, that there's true science behind it. And that if the science is not yet there, that some sort of new alternative therapy, especially something that you're going to, to take in yourself, would be done under the form of clinical trials. So it could really be one, you can be sure the quality also of what it is that you're taking, which is important.
Brandy, we have time for one more question from you.
Okay, so I'm ready, because I was really excited to hear about your brand new chief patient officer, because I often say that, and you hit on it, those social connections and things have been proven to really help improve outcomes and even the quality of your life, regardless of your outcome. For me, I felt like I had the very best circumstances to deal with my cancer. I had an amazing workplace that told me your job right now is to get well. I had health insurance that meant that I think my total out-of-pocket cost for dealing with my cancer was $700, where other people get bankrupted by this for life. I always had transportation. I always had everything I needed to fight this diagnosis. So what do you think is going to be the first thing that you're going to ask of your chief patient officer? What do you think he's going to tackle first?
I'm going to ask him how we're going to expand further. So we've already been able to release transportation grants to those in the highest areas of need. So health systems in the highest areas of need that are going to truly transform an ability for a patient to get to care or to have housing next to care. I want to ask him, where are the other gaps? One, where are the gaps that we're not thinking about right now associated with, outside transportation, lodging, navigation? What else should we be thinking about that's going to come up into the future that we need to be thinking about from a patient's perspective? And how do we grow what we do right now? And how do we set the priorities? There are more priorities than we would be able to fill as the American Cancer Society. So of all the things we could do, how do we choose to fill the gaps in the cancer care continuum? As you just talked about, you had a ride, you had a place to stay, you had a caregiver. Those three things actually are the major contributors to cancer disparities. The people who don't have transportation, don't have lodging, and don't have a caregiver, or they don't have the right digital or health literacy knowledge in order to understand how to navigate their cancer program. That's where we see ourselves as filling in that gap. So it's not an easy question to answer about how we determine what's our highest and best use of the time and resources that we have. But I'm so glad we're going to have him at the helm. He's amazing.
Well, congratulations, and great question, Brandy. And Dr. Karen Knutson, if you would leave us with your number one or top suggestion for everyone who's attending today, what would you say from your heart to their ears?
Yeah, be inquisitive. So an advocate for your own health. And, so often people are afraid to ask, their providers hard questions like, do I have a genetic risk of cancer? Or when should I get screened? Or, something just seems off and I need you to pay attention to it. Be your own best health advocate.
Well, Brandy, you look like a prime example of that. Wow. So Brandy Plotnick, thank you again for joining us here at our Healed Gathering. Dr. Karen Knutson, you were just wonderful. It's a great opportunity to, in our little world, share you with the world and see if anyone would like to give money to ACS. Now you know who's in charge of these dollars. Yes, 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 yes. And I love to end every ACS Healed Community Gathering with a little prayer. It's a one-line prayer. It's not a petitionary prayer. It's just, again, we start it with an attitude of gratitude and we end with one. It's just to thank you for the grace in helping me welcome what is happening right now. That takes grace. It really takes grace to see where we are right now. But then it opens the door for your how. How can we do what we want to do? How can we live the way we want to live? Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us today. Thank you all for joining us. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.